Na- Oh Krishna. Not really sir. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर सदस्य श्रीमद अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय। जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर सदस्य श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। रामाचार्य श्री हरदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप कविनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरी गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय। मायपुर नवदीप धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। जमुना माई की जय। नर्मदा माई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी की जय। समवेत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। All good is to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All good is to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All good is to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All good is to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All good is to His divine grace. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाखया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं जाग्रजातं सगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सकलललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिविकासस्वामिनिति नामे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। रामाय रामभद्राय रामचंद्राय वेदसे रघुनाथाय नाथाय सीताय पते नमः। श्रीराम राम रामेति रमे रामे मनोरमे सहस्रनाम तत्तुल्यं राम नाम वरानमे। Hare Krishna devotees. So we are very happy to welcome all devotees in this online session of reading from the book Ramayana, the story of Lord Rama, Valmiki's Ramayana, written or presented by His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Swami Maharaj. So this book is dedicated to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So we are directly going to start from today from Balakanda. So before that, I want to just request all devotees, whether you are able to hear me properly or not. I just need a message from you that yes, I am able to hear, so that I can be rest assured for the session that those who are attending now can hear me properly. So please, you can message me if you have any, if you are able to hear me. You can message me that yes, we are able to hear you, then we can continue the session. Thank you very much. Before starting, I just want to request devotees that if you don't have the book with you, because it is a must that devotees who are attending the session at least have this book. If you don't have, or if you want to give as a gift to anybody, then I'm giving you the link. You can order the book. And we have an offer also for devotees, those who want to distribute in a retail price. However, our wholesale price is 125 rupees per book if anybody takes more than 20 copies. But retail discount price also we are giving for those devotees who want to get the book directly to their house, without hassle of transport or anything like that. So that's why we are offering a retail discount of 159 rupees. And so here is the link for to order the book. So we'll start reading. So once again, welcome all the devotees to for the reading session, continuing from page number 42. With the return of the sacrificial horse, Maharaj Sagara successfully concluded the sacrifice. After hearing from Amshuman the prophetic words of Garuda, the king became absorbed in trying to formulate the means to make the Ganga descend to the earth. However, Maharaj Sagara passed away before achieving that goal. After the death of his grandfather, Amshuman ruled the kingdom for some time. He later gave the throne to his son Dilipa and retired to the forest to perform austerities, hoping to induce Ganga to descend to earth. After his death, Amshuman went to heavenly planets, but his desire to cause the descent of Ganga remained unfulfilled. Dilipa also sought to bring Ganga to earth, but he too died before his desire was fulfilled. Dilipa's son Bhagiratha then inherited the kingdom and likewise desired to perform austerities to cause Ganga to descend. Since he had no son, Bhagiratha entrusted the rule of the kingdom to his ministers and retired to the forest. After Maharaj Bhagiratha had performed austerities for 1,000 years, Lord Brahma became pleased with him. Accompanied by the demigods, Lord Brahma appeared before the king to award him a benediction. Maharaj Bhagiratha worshipped Lord Brahma and then begged, "Please allow my ancestors, the sons of King Sagara, to receive the water of Ganga. In addition, kindly benedict me to have a son." Lord Brahma replied, "I agree to award you these benedictions. However, the earth is incapable of bearing the weight of Ganga's descent. You should request Lord Shiva to absorb the impact of the falling water, for only he is powerful enough to do so." Determined to gain Lord Shiva's favor, Maharaj Bhagiratha began performing severe austerities. He stood motionless on the tip of a single toe for 1 year. At that time, Lord Shiva was pleased to appear before the king. When Maharaj Bhagiratha expressed his desire, Lord Mahadeva agreed to bear the force of Ganga's falling water upon his head. Soon afterward, the Ganga began to descend toward earth from her course in the heavenly planets. All the demigods assembled to witness the spectacle. However, when Ganga Devi saw Lord Shiva prepared to take her upon his head, she considered that his contact would contaminate her. Thus, upon seeing the expression of disgust displayed by Ganga Devi, Lord Shiva became insulted. In retaliation, he angrily captured her and concealed her waters within his matted hair, thwarting her descent to earth. When Maharaj Bhagiratha saw how Ganga had become entangled, he resumed his austerities. Finally, Lord Shiva gave up his anger and released Ganga Devi, allowing her to fall into the Bindu Sarovar in the Himalayas. Afterwards, the Ganga split into 7 streams. Six of these formed other rivers, while the seventh followed Bhagiratha as he rode upon his royal chariot. While wending her way through various lands, it so happened that the Ganga inundated the sacrificial arena of the great sage Jahanu. Becoming excited with rage, the rishi swallowed up the entire river. Upon seeing this, the demigods were struck with wonder. They then approached Jahanu and requested him to release Ganga Devi on the condition that she would become known as his daughter. The rishi agreed, and thus the Ganga was able to continue her journey. Finally, the Ganga reached the site that had been excavated by the sons of Sagara. By entering that great crevice, the Ganga went down to Rasatala. In doing so, she submerged the ashes of Sagara's 60,000 sons, enabling them to reach their heavenly destination. Lord Brahma appeared once more before Maharaj Bhagiratha and declared, O king, your mission has now been accomplished. From this time forward, the king Ganga shall be known as your daughter, Bhagirathi. After thus delivering his forefathers, Maharaj Bhagiratha returned to his capital and resumed ruling over his kingdom. Thus the entire night passed away as Vishwa. Thus the entire night passed away as Vishwamitra narrated to Rama the fascinating history of river Ganga and her descent to earth. When morning appeared, Rama expressed his eagerness to cross the Ganga and continue the journey. The caravan was soon made ready to depart. After reaching the far bank of Ganga, the caravan traveled on and eventually came to the city of Vishala. When Lord Rama requested Vishwamitra to speak about the dynasty of kings that ruled this city, the rishi narrated the following history. The demigods and demons are by nature inimical toward each one another. Once, following the advice of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the demigods executed a truce with the demons for the purpose of churning nectar from the sea. This was done with the understanding that when the nectar was churned, both sides would share it equally. Thus, both the demons and the demigods, desiring to become immortal, started for the ocean of milk, taking with them Mandara mountain and Vasuki. By the expert arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the demons held the snake near the mouth, and the demigods held his tail. Vasuki, with his thousands of eyes and mouths, breathed smoke and blazing fire, which severely wounded the demons. Thus, the demons, who appeared like trees burned by a forest fire, gradually became powerless. Because the demigods were also affected by the blazing breath of Vasuki, their bodily luster diminished, and their garments, garlands, weapons, and faces were blackened by smoke. However, by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, clouds appeared on the sea, pouring torrents of rain, and strong breezes carried particles of water from the sea waves, thus giving relief to the demigods. Because of mountain's great height, the demigods and demons became fatigued, and some were dying. Thus, because Mandara mountain was very heavy and was not held by any support, it sank into the ocean. In this way, the prowess of both the demons and demigods was vanquished. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, then appeared on the bank of his carrier Garuda. The Lord appeared like a blackish cloud. Wearing a garland of flowers, he was dressed with yellow garments and earrings that shone on his ears like lightning. His eyes were pinkish, and his hair was spread over his shoulders. By his mercy, he brought the demigods and demons back to life. The Lord then lifted the mountain with one hand and placed it on the back of Garuda. Then he sat on the mountain, and Garuda carried him to the spot of the churning and placed the mountain in the middle of the sea. The Lord then asked Garuda to leave, because as long as Garuda was present, Vasuki could not come there. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, appearing in his incarnation as Kurmavatara, the gigantic tortoise, supported the mountain upon his back as he lay at the bottom of the ocean. Then Lord Vishnu used his strong, glorious arms, which award fearlessness throughout the universe, and took hold of Vasuki like a rope and began churning the ocean, using Mandara mountain as a churning rod. Engaged in this way, the Lord appeared like the beautifully situated mountain named Indranila. The mountain moved back and forth, scratching the back of Lord Tortoise, who, while partially sleeping, was experiencing an itching sensation. Lord Vishnu then further expanded himself in a gigantic form and supported the top of Mount Mandara with one hand to keep it steady. As the churning resumed with great force, the fish, sharks, tortoises, and snakes became agitated. The entire ocean became turbulent, and even the large aquatic animals like whales, water elephants, crocodiles, and Timingala fish, large whales that can swallow small whales, came to the surface. While the ocean was being churned in this way, it first produced a huge amount of dangerous poison called hala hala. The demigod, seeing no one else to save them, approached Lord Shiva and offered him prayers. Lord Shiva is known as Ashutosh because he is very pleased if one becomes his devotee. Therefore, he readily agreed to drink all the poison generated by the churning. The goddess Durga, Lord Shiva's wife, was not at all disturbed when Lord Shiva agreed to drink the poison, for she knew Lord Shiva's prowess. Indeed, she was pleased with this agreement. Lord Shiva gathered the devastating poison which had spread everywhere. He took it, he took it in his hand and drank it, which made his neck become bluish. However, a small quantity of poison spilled from his hands to the ground. It is because of this poison that there are poisonous snakes, scorpions, toxic plants, and other poisonous things in the world. Thereafter, in the course of churning the milk ocean, 600 million apsaras were produced. And because neither the demigods or demons accepted them, they became prostitutes. When Varuni, the goddess of liquor, that is Sura, next emerged from the milk ocean, the demons would not accept her. The demigods did, however, and for this reason, the sons of Atiti became known as Suras, whereas the sons of Diti became known as Asuras. Finally, after many years, Lord Vishnu, in the form of Dhanvantri, the inaugurator of the medical science, appeared from the ocean of milk, holding a water pot filled with nectar in one hand and a staff in the other. A great fight ensued between the demigods and demons over the nectar. When both sides neared destruction, the demons took possession of the nectar. Lord Vishnu then assumed the form of Mohini Murti. When this extraordinarily beautiful form of the Lord as a young woman appeared before them, the demons immediately became captivated by her. Because the demons were then fighting among themselves to possess the nectar, they selected this beautiful woman to settle their quarrel. Taking advantage of their weakness, Mohini, the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, enticed the demons to promise that whatever decision she gave, they would agree to. When the demons made this promise, Mohini Murti had the demigods and demons sit in different lines so that she could distribute the nectar. Mohini Murti approached the demons and spoke graciously to them. The demons threw out themselves most fortunate to talk with her. Since the demigods were seated at a distant place, the demons threw out they would get only a small portion of the nectar. Indeed, the demons concluded that because Mohini Murti appeared so pleased with them, she would give the demons all the nectar. Enchanted by the exquisite, transcendental beauty of the Mohini form, the demons agreed to hand over the nectar to Mohini Devi, who then artfully delivered it to the demigods. The demons were so captivated by the tricks and friendly words of Mohini Murti that although the demigods were served first, the demons were pacified merely by her sweet words. The Lord said to the demons, "The demigods are very miserly and are excessively anxious to take the nectar first. So let them have it first. Since you are not like them, you can wait a little longer. You are all heroes and are therefore pleased with me. It is better for you to wait until after the demigods drink." The Lord intended to distribute the nectar only to the demigods. She knew that the demons were quite unfit to drink the nectar. When the demons saw that Mohini Murti was cheating them, however, they remained silent. Nevertheless, one demon named Rahu dressed himself like a demigod and sat down in the line of demigods. Sitting beside the sun and the moon, Nevertheless, one demon named Rahu dressed himself like a demigod and sat down in the line of the demigods, sitting beside the sun and the moon. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead understood how Rahu was cheating, he immediately cut off the demon's head. Rahu, however, had already tasted the nectar, and therefore, although his head was severed, he remained alive. After the demigods finished drinking the nectar, the Supreme Personality of Godhead assumed his own form and quickly carried off the nectar by an act of deception. When the demons opposed her, Mohini Murti easily vanquished them and thus enabled Indra to become the undisputed ruler of the three worlds. Upon seeing the defeat of her sons, Diti became very unhappy and began performing austerities with the aim of obtaining a son capable of killing Indra in the revenge. Knowing that Diti was intent upon performing austerities for 1,000 years to attain his destruction, Indra came to her and began rendering menial service to her with great care and attention. When only 10 years of her woe remained, Diti became pleased with Indra, assured him that she would pacify her son once he was born, so that Indra would continue ruling over the three worlds without fear. Indra, however, remained wary. Sometime later, Diti became very tired and carelessly laid down, placing her head where her feet normally would rest. In this way, Diti neglectfully allowed her hair to become contaminated. Taking advantage of this fault, Indra utilized his mystic power to enter her womb. Indra then cut Diti's embryo into 7 parts. When the fetus carried out in a shrill voice, he again cut each part into 7, making a total of 49 pieces. Diti, however, could understand what was happening and begged Indra to stop killing her son. However, having been discovered, the repentant Indra came out from her womb and begged forgiveness from his stepmother. Thus, Diti requested that her 49 children be allowed to become wind gods. Indra agreed, and thus he and Diti were reconciled, while the 49 children became recognized as demigods known as the Maruts. Vishwamitra concluded, this city, Vishala, is situated at the place where Diti formerly performed her austerities. Later, the son of Ikshvaku named Vishala built the city, and the present king in his dynasty is Sumati. Maharaj Sumati then came out of the city to receive and worship Vishwamitra. At his invitation, the party rested there for the night. The next morning, the caravan again proceeded on its journey toward the kingdom of Videha. Upon reaching the outskirts of Mithila, the capital city of Maharaj Janaka, Lord Rama saw an old, desolate hermitage. After Rama inquired about it from Vishwamitra, the Rishi explained, this ashrama formerly belonged to Gautama Rishi, who practiced austerities here along with his wife Ahalya. Once upon a time, knowing that Gautama was away from his ashrama, King Indra assumed a form that closely resembled the Rishi. He went to the ashram in that disguise and approached Gautama's wife, saying, my dear beautiful one, I desire union with you immediately. Please do not disappoint me. Although Ahalya recognized that it was Indra disguised as Gautama, she did not refuse him, for she too eagerly desired his embraces. Thus the union took place, and after thus their lusty urges had been gratified. Ahalya begged, "O Indra, please protect us from the wrath of my husband Gautama." Indra assured Ahalya that he would depart immediately, unnoticed by anyone. However, while Indra was sneaking away from Gautama's ashram, the rishi suddenly returned. When Gautama saw Indra disguised as himself, his head hanging down in the shame, he could well understand the nature of his misconduct. Thus, with great anger, the rishi cursed Indra, "O lusty fool, may your testicles immediately fall off as punishment for this abominable act." No sooner had the curse been pronounced when Indra's testicles fell from his body and dropped to the ground. Then, after entering his ashram, Gautama cursed his wife, "O wretched woman, from now on you should be capable of eating or drinking, and from now on you shall be incapable of eating and drinking, and you will have to lie down on a bed of ashes." Thus Ahalya was turned into a pillar of stone. Gautama then said, "Only when Lord Rama visits this spot in the distant future will you be absolved of your sin, freed from all lusty desires, and reunited with me as your husband." Saying this, Gautama departed from the Himalayas. Meanwhile, Indra informed the demigods, "I have successfully thwarted Gautama's Rishi's attempt to attain my position as king of heaven by making him angry. However, in the process, I have lost my testicles. Now, somehow or other, please arrange for my manhood to be restored." Responding to Indra's plea, the demigods arranged for the Pitas to castrate a ram and grafted its testicles into Indra's body. After narrating this story, Vishwamitra invited Lord Rama to enter the ashrama of Gautama. As soon as Rama entered the hermitage, Ahalya regained her original form, dazzling with ascetic splendor. Indeed, upon Ahalya's liberation, there was a sudden shower of celestial flowers, with drums beating in the heavens. Rama and Lakshmana respectfully touched Ahalya's feet, and she reciprocally welcomed the two brothers and Vishwamitra. Gautama Rishi then came to be reunited with his wife and worshipped Lord Rama and Lakshmana with great reverence. Thereafter, the caravan entered Mithila. Upon arriving at the sacrificial arena of King Janaka, Lord Rama was pleased to see that thousands of Brahmanas had assembled from all parts of the world. Hearing of Vishwamitra's arrival, Maharaj Janaka hurriedly went to greet him and addressed him, saying, "O best of the saintly persons, this sacrifice will take 12 days to accomplish, with the demigods appearing personally to accept their shares of the offerings. My dear sir, please tell me who these two exalted personalities are that have accompanied you. Indeed, they appear to be like gods in human form." Vishwamitra replied, These two young men are Rama and Lakshmana, the sons of King Dasharatha. They have come here to examine the great bow that you have been worshipping. I brought them from Ayodhya to my ashrama to kill the Rakshasas that were disturbing my sacrifice. On the way, they killed the she-demon Tataka, and then at Siddha ashram, Rama hurled Maricha 100 yojanas into the sea and killed Subahu. Before arriving at Mithila, Rama freed Ahalya from her husband's curse and received the worship of Gautama Rishi. Later, when everyone was comfortably seated, Shatananda, नीचे record कर रहे कि नहीं, एक बार देखिए. Later, when everyone was comfortably seated, Shatananda, the chief priest of Maharaj Janaka and eldest son of Gautama Rishi, requested Vishwamitra to recount in detail the story of how his mother had regained her original form at the sight of Lord Rama. The Rishi then happily related the entire incident. Thereafter, Shatananda reciprocated by narrating the glorious history of Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra was born as the son of Gadhi and formerly ruled his kingdom as a righteous Kshatriya. Once taking an akshoni of soldiers with him, Vishwamitra began to travel over the earth. In the due course, he came upon the hermitage of great Brahma Rishi, Vashishta. Entering the beautiful hermitage, which was inhabited by many rishis, he bowed respectfully before Vashishta. The rishi received Vishwamitra cordially, and the two became engaged in friendly conversation. Vashishta said, "My dear king, please remain here for a few days as my request so that I may entertain you in a manner befitting your position." Vishwamitra humbly replied, "I am already fully satisfied with your kind reception. I ask only for your permission to leave." Vashishta, however, repeatedly insisted that Vishwamitra and his men remain. Finally, Vishwamitra relented. This being settled, Vashishta brought his Kamadhenu cow named Shabala before Vishwamitra and ordered her to produce a sumptuous royal feast. Being so commanded, the celestial cow immediately brought forth a huge quantity of seemingly unlimited varieties of food and drink, all arranged on sparklingly silver platters. Vishwamitra and his men then feasted to their full satisfaction. However, before long, Vishwamitra began to feel envious of Vasishtha, wishing he had the celestial cow for himself. As the pangs of greed surfaced, Vishwamitra told Vasishtha, "I must have this wonderful cow of yours at all costs. Please give her to me, and I will reward you appropriately." Vishwamitra offered the sage hundreds of thousands of cows, gold, unlimited jewels, and more. Regardless, Vashishta refused to give up his celestial cow, saying, "I am very sorry, but I shall never be able to part with this Kamadhenu, even in exchange for 1 million cows, 1 billion cows. This wish fulfilling cow is inseparable for me, for I need her to supply all the ingredients for my sacrificial performances." Vishwamitra then replied, "This cow should rightfully belong to me, for the king is meant to possess the very best of everything." Hare Krishna. For the devotees who have joined just now, uh, we are continuing to read from Ramayana, written by His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Swami Maharaj, from page number. We are in page number 56, the third paragraph. Vishwamitra then replied, "This cow should rightfully belong to me, for the king is meant to possess the very best of everything." Because Vasishta's refusal only fanned the flames of Vishwamitra's desire, the king proceeded to offer the sage more and more. Regardless, the Vasishta refused to part with his cow. Finally, out of frustration and anger, Vishwamitra grabbed the cow and began dragging her out of the ashrama. At this, the Kamadhenu cried out pitifully, imploring Vashishta, "O Rishi, why are you allowing me to be taken away like this? Although I have served you faithfully, are you now going to desert me?" Shabala freed herself from the hundreds of men assisting Vishwamitra in dragging her away. As she fled back to the ashrama, Vishwamitra replied, "My dear Shabala, I am certainly not abandoning you. However, my power is not equal to kings. I am helpless to rescue you." Shabala replied, "Dear Rishi, the king's material strength is insignificant in comparison to your spiritual strength. If you allow me to do so, I will utilize your superior energy to vanquish Vishwamitra's army myself." When Vashishta gave his consent, Shabala proceeded to create innumerable fierce warriors from her body that began to consume Vishwamitra's army. However, the powerful king destroyed them all. Moreover, his Kshatriya spirit bristling, he challenged Shabala to create more soldiers if she desired to continue fighting. Shabala then proceeded to produce more fiercer warriors that sprang from her uders, genitals, anus, and other body parts. These superior soldiers completely vanquished Vishwamitra's army. But the Brahmarishi reduced them to a mere pile of ashes simply by uttering a mighty roar. Having thus lost not only his entire army, but his sons as well, Vishwamitra departed pale and dejected. Vishwamitra ordered his only remaining son to rule the kingdom and retired to the forest to perform austerities, hoping to please Lord Shiva. Hare Krishna. Now I am going to hand over this reading for to continue by Asita Prabhu, who is going to read. Now I am going to give the grant the mic access and camera access, so he can read. So before Asita Prabhu starts, I want to just inform all the devotees who have come to please attend this session, these reading sessions every day without fail. It's very rare opportunity that we could read this book. Very well, everybody can read themselves, but in congregation, that means it's very rare that all together read this book. It is very rare. So I request all the devotees to please come for this session, and uh, we can take a vow to bring our at least one or two devotees, at least five devotees, to tell them so that they can also join to read. uh, so it's very very important. At least during this Ramanomi, we could read a few parts from this every day, little little, so that we can complete like this many many times of reading. So I will hand over this session to Asita Prabhu, and then I will conclude the session after 32, after some time, at 9:30. Asita Prabhu, are you able to hear me?
Yes, Prabhu, I am able to hear you.
Okay, Prabhu. I'm giving you the camera access also.
Okay.
We have to say, matlab, yes.
Prabhu, I have got the camera access.
Okay. So you have to read from page number 57, the last but one paragraph.
Okay.
Okay, after some time. Okay, I will switch off the mic.
After some time, Lord Shiva became satisfied with Vishwamitra's austerities and appeared before the king to reward him. The delighted Vishwamitra expressed his desire to possess the knowledge of all celestial weapons. Lord Shiva, known as Ashutosh, because he is easily pleased, awarded Vishwamitra his desired benediction. Thus Vishwamitra, who was already too proud, became exceedingly puffed up after receiving the celestial weapons, thinking his prowess to be invincible. Vishwamitra went directly to the ashrama of Vashishta and began showering down his weapons so fiercely that it appeared the ashram was on the verge of annihilation. All the sages residing there began to flee in terror, despite Vashishta's assurances. Indeed, in a short time the area appeared desolate. Picking up his Brahminical rod, Vashishta addressed Vishwamitra as follows: Because of your rash act of aggression, I shall now cut down your false pride and show you the futility of your so called prowess. Vashishta held out his Brahminical rod and neutralized all of Vishwamitra's weapons. Vishwamitra then resorted to hurling his remaining celestial weapons. When this too failed, he prepared to release the ultimate weapon, the Brahmastra. From above, the demigods witnessed the spectacular duel. When Vishwamitra invoked the terrible Brahmastra, they became wonderstruck and fearful. However, after Vishwamitra released the Brahmastra, Vashishta counteracted it Vashishta countered it by assuming an awesome form of gigantic proportions, with flaming with flames blazing forth from every pore of his body, neutralizing the energy of the Brahmastra. The tremendous form exhibited by Vashishta stunned everyone who witnessed it. Indeed, after seeing the Rishi's great prowess, the sages began to offer Vashishta prayers. With the Brahmastra weapon countered, Vashishta again assumed his normal form. In the meantime, Vishwamitra desisted from battle and departed, condemning the meager powers of the Kshatriyas. Understanding Brahminical power to be superior, Vishwamitra became determined to become a Brahmarishi like Vashishta. He then went into seclusion with his wife and began to execute severe penances. After 1000 years, Lord Brahma appeared before Vishwamitra and formally conferred upon him the status of Rajrishi as a reward. However, as Lord Brahma departed, Vishwamitra hung his head in shame over the meagerness of his achievement. Remaining determined to achieve the status of brahmachari and nothing else, Vishwamitra again resumed his severe austerities. During this time, during the same time, there was a king in the line of Ikshvaku named Trishanku who ruled from his capital, Ayodhya. Desiring to perform a sacrifice that would enable him to ascend to heaven in this human body without changing bodies, he requested Vashishta to become his priest. Vashishta, however, refused, claiming it would be impossible to perform such a sacrifice. Afterward, Trishanku approached Vashishta's 100 sons who were engaged in performing sacrifices and asked them to assist him in the performance of his sacrifice. However, when they learnt of their father's refusal, they angrily chastised him for attempting to solicit their help after being turned down by his guru. Hearing their criticism, Trishanku replied, "If you are not willing to help me, I will seek the assistance of others more magnanimous." Upon hearing Trishanku's impudent statement, the rishis became furious and cursed Trishanku to become a Chandal. Soon thereafter, Trishanku's golden complexion turned black, his garments became old and soiled, his long lustrous hair began to fall out, his cosmetics turned to ashes, his gold ornaments turned to iron, and his garland transformed into flowers from a crematorium. When Trishanku's minister witnessed his transformation, they immediately abandoned him as untouchable. Having become a Chandala, bereft of his former position, Trishanku went to see Vishwamitra, who was engaged in performing austerities. Vishwamitra welcomed Trishanku with compassion, hearing from him how he had been cursed by the sons of Vashishta. When Trishanku begged Vishwamitra for help, the rishi assured him of shelter and promised to provide him with priests that would assist him in the performance of his sacrifice. Thereafter, Vishwamitra ordered his sons to petition all the priests and qualified brahmanas to assist him, asking also for the names of those who refused. Thus, many brahmanas from kingdoms across the earth came to his ashram. Only Vashishta and his sons and the rishi Mahadaya refused to participate, saying, "What brahmana or demigod would be willing to accept an offering from the hands of a Kshatriya, what to speak of a Chandala?" When Vishwamitra heard these harsh and insulting words, he immediately uttered the following curse: "May the wretched sons of Vashishta be reduced to ashes and sent to the abode of Yamaraja this very day. Thereafter let them take 700 births as Chandalas, and may that fool Mahadev become a Nishad." The curses quickly took effect, and Vishwamitra was able to perceive the results by dint of his mystic vision. Vishwamitra then requested the Brahmanas present to perform Trishanku's sacrifice. Simply out of fear of being cursed, they complied and started the sacrifice. When Vishwamitra invited the demigods to attend and accept their share of the offerings, they desisted. This made Vishwamitra very angry, and he declared to Trishanku that he would elevate him to heaven by his own prowess. Indeed, as soon as Vishwamitra made this vow, Trishanku began rising to heaven in his self same body. When King Indra saw Trishanku approaching heaven without having earned sufficient pious merit, and having and after having disobeyed his guru Vashishta, Indra forced Trishanku to fall head first back toward earth. While thus falling, Trishanku called out helplessly to Vishwamitra to rescue him. Vishwamitra not only stopped Trishanku's fall, but also created a replica planetary system, complete with imitation demigods for Trishanku to reside in. The demigods, however, were outraged by this wonderful feat. Approaching Vishwamitra, they said, "Give up your efforts to help Trishanku. He lacks the necessary qualifications for residing in the heavenly planets." Vishwamitra, however, insisted on keeping his promise. He declared, "I will never go back on my promise to send Trishanku to the heavenly planets without a change of body. Therefore, let it be ordained that my newly created heaven be accepted by you and remain for the duration of the universe." In the end, the demigods relented, and thus Trishanku remained head downwards in space. By the mercy of Vishwamitra, he enjoys heavenly bliss while shining brightly among the stars. Vishwamitra then returned to executing austerities, determined to become a Brahm Rishi like Vashishta. Then, after a long time had passed, a beautiful Apsara named Menaka came to bathe at the Pushkar lake, where Vishwamitra was conducting his austerities. Seeing her, Vishwamitra became overwhelmed by lust. Eager to enjoy sex, Vishwamitra implored her to remain with him at his ashram. Menka happily consented, and thus they passed 10 years together, enjoying each other while lost to the pleasures of sensual enjoyment. Finally, Vishwamitra came to his senses and felt great disgust. He thought to himself, "I have foolishly wasted 10 years, merged in the so called enjoyment of sense gratification. Now I can understand that Menka was sent here by the demigods simply to steal my accumulated ascetic merit. By becoming a slave to lust, I have neglected my austerities. Thus I have fallen down from my exalted position." Vishwamitra dismissed the fearful Menka and then went to the northern side of the Himalayas, determined to remain celibate from then on. When Vishwamitra again resumed his austerities, the demigods grew increasingly fearful and approached Lord Brahma, begging him to award Vishwamitra the status of Maharishi. Lord Brahma agreed, but when he appeared before Vishwamitra, Vishwamitra replied that he would not be satisfied with anything less than the status of Brahma Rishi. Thus, Lord Brahma explained, "You have not yet fully controlled your senses. Therefore, you will have to practice more austerities before achieving your desired goal." After Lord Brahma departed, Vishwamitra resumed his austerities, standing with arms upraised and subsisting on air alone for 1000 years. Thus, Indra and the other demigods again became fearful and devised yet another plan to thwart Vishwamitra. Indra requested the lovely Apsara named Rambha to allure Vishwamitra away from his practice of austerities. Rambha, trembling with fear, declined, saying that she feared Vishwamitra's curse. Indra, however, assured her by saying, "Dear girl, please do not be afraid, for you shall surely succeed. It is springtime, and Cupid shall accompany you. I shall also go, disguised as a sweet singing cuckoo. Do not worry, your beauty is irresistible. Vishwamitra will become a toy in your hands." Ramba finally agreed, and therefore she appeared before Vishwamitra in a most pleasing manner, displaying her various feminine allurements. At first, Vishwamitra was pleased to see her, thinking she had come of her own accord. However, after a moment's consideration, Vishwamitra realized that her appearance was simply another trick to thwart him from his practice. Flaring with anger, Vishwamitra roared, "You foolish woman! You knew I was performing austerities for the purpose of controlling my senses. Still, you dare to persist, trying to seduce me. For this, you will have to stand as a stone statue for 10,000 years, or until the Rishi Vashishta delivers you." Ramba immediately turned into stone while Indra and Cupid fearfully fled from the scene. However, after cursing the Apsara, Vishwamitra became morose, realizing that he had fallen victim to uncontrolled anger, thus diminishing his accumulated stock of ascetic merit. Vishwamitra then vowed to never again become angry. I will not breathe, utter a word, or eat a morsel of food or drink until I achieve the status of Brahma Rishi. Vishwamitra then resumed his austerities. However, after fasting for 1000 years, he decided to eat something. Just as Vishwamitra was about to take his first bite, King Indra appeared before him in the dress of a Brahmana and begged for all his food. Without remorse or anger, Vishwamitra humbly gave all he had planned to eat to the Brahmana and went back to performing his austerities for another 1000 years. Vishwamitra's powerful austerities began to heat up the entire universe, and smoke began to emanate from his head. Feeling great distress, the demigods again approached Lord Brahma to appease Vishwamitra. At that time, Lord Brahma, along with the demigods, went to Vishwamitra and awarded him the status of Brahmarishi, just to persuade him to desist in his austerities. Vishwamitra became very satisfied at heart. However, he further insisted, it is not enough for you to award me the status of Brahmarishi. I must also be accepted as such by the other Brahmarishis, especially Vashishta. Thus, at the request of the demigods, Vashishta went to Vishwamitra and agreed to recognize him as a Brahmarishi. In turn, Vishwamitra also offered great respect to Vashishta. Their long standing enmity was soon forgotten and they became friends. The next morning, Maharaj Janaka called for Vishwamitra, Ram, and Lakshman. After respectfully greeting them, he said, I know that such great personalities would not come here without some grave purpose. Therefore, please inform me what service I may offer you. Vishwamitra smilingly replied, Ram and Lakshman have come here because they are eager to see the wonderful bow you keep and have worshipped for so long. Maharaj Janaka then explained, this bow was used by Lord Shiva in a bygone age to disrupt the sacrifice of his father in law Daksha. Being denied his sacrificial share, Lord Shiva angrily picked up this bow and threatened to annihilate the demigods. Coming to their senses, the demigods were able to pacify Lord Shiva. In turn, he handed over his bow to them. The demigods later entrusted the bow to Devavrata, the descendant of Maharaj Nimi, my forefather. After describing the history of Lord Shiva's bow, Maharaj Janak then related another interesting story. Once upon a time, as I was leveling the sacrificial arena with a golden plow, much to my astonishment, I happened to uncover a baby girl. I named her Sita, Furrow, and raised her as my own daughter. Sita quickly grew up, and when she attained maturity, many eligible princes came calling, hoping to win her hand in marriage. Since my daughter was not an ordinary being, I explained to the princes that to win her hand in marriage, they must possess great valor. Then I brought forth the bow of Lord Shiva and asked them to string it. However, none could even lift or hold it. What to speak of bending or stringing it? Most of the princes left, feeling insulted, and then banded together to attack Mithila. A fierce battle raged for 12 months. Finally, as my army weakened, I prayed to the demigods for assistance. In answer to my plea, the celestials mercifully sent an army, and simply by seeing them, my enemies fled in fear. Since Ram is eager to see the bow of Lord Shiva, I will bring it before him to examine. If Ram is able to string this wonderful bow, then I will gladly give him my beautiful daughter Sita. Soon 500 strong men pulled the immense bow, which was encased in a chest and mounted on a cart with 8 wheels. Vishwamitra invited Ram to open the chest, while thousands of people gathered to watch. As Ram gazed with admiration at the bow, Maharaj Janaka warned, even great demigods, demons, Rakshasas, Yakshas, Gandharvas, Nagas have failed to even bend this mighty bow. How then will a mere mortal succeed in stringing it? Nevertheless, Rama sportingly placed his left hand upon the middle of the bow, then, in the presence of the huge crowd, he effortlessly lifted the bow out of its case. Holding the bow aloft, Ram strung the bow in an instant and bending it with great force, snapped it in the middle, just as a baby elephant breaks a stick of sugarcane. The thunderous cracking sound produced was like a mountain bursting apart and caused all but Vishwamitra, Janaka, Rama, and Lakshman to fall to the ground. Thus, with great pleasure, Maharaj Janaka requested Vishwamitra to send messengers to Ayodhya, inviting King Darsha to attend the marriage of Rama and Sita. When the messengers arrived 3 days later at the court of Maharaj Dashrath, they related the glorious events of Rama's breaking the bow and winning Sita's hand in marriage. Hearing this, Maharaj Dashrath became overjoyed. Then, after consulting with Vashishta and Vamadev, Maharaj Dashrath decided that they should all depart for Mithila the following day. The next morning, Maharaj Dashrath started out, keeping his family priest in front and taking his army and a great quantity of wealth. After traveling for 4 days, the party reached the outskirts of Mithila. Seeing his approach, King Janaka came out to meet Maharaj Dashrath, giving him a royal reception. Afterward, when Maharaj Dashrath had met with his sons, it was fixed that the preliminary marriage rituals would begin at an auspicious moment the next day. The next morning, everyone assembled, and before the wedding ceremonies commenced, Maharaj Dashrath requested King Janaka to hear of his royal lineage from Vashishta. Being so requested, the great sage Vashishta narrated this history of the Raghu dynasty. Marichi was a direct son of Lord Brahma, and Marichi's son was Kashyap. From Kashyap was born Vivaswan, the sun god, and Vivaswan's son was Manu. The son of Vivaswat Manu was Ikshvaku, who was the first ruler of Ayodhya. Many generations later, in the Ikshvaku line came Bharat, whose son Asita was conquered by his enemies, the Haihyas, Talanjagas, and Sasbindus. Being defeated, Asita decided to retire to the Himalayas along with his 2 wives. When Asita passed away, one of the widows, named Kalindi, was pregnant. The other widow became envious of her and mixed poison in with Kalindi's food, desiring to kill the child within her womb. When Kalindi began to suffer the effects of the poison, the great rishi Chavana happened to arrive at the spot. Kalindi tearfully sought his blessings so that her child might live. The rishi assured her that a son would be born along with the excreted poison. Because of these unusual circumstances, Kalindi's son was named Sagara, or one who is born along with poison. Hare Krishna Prabhu, can we stop here? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay.
One second. Uh, Before wrapping this session, I would like to do a small polling, which I thought it would create some interest with the devotees. So, devotees, those who are attending, you can just uh, answer this polling, which is there flashing on your screen. Okay. Fine, thank you. Then another one is uh, this one. Asita Prabhu, are you able to see this? Okay.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. So as I have already said, and again I want to repeat. So if you don't have the book, then this is the link. And if you want to order for retail discount price, so this is the link. So please order the book. So Asita Prabhu, you read till page number 60?
66.
66, yeah, 66. 66, Navarthilas Rama.
Just a moment. No, no, it's not 66. It's 68. Sorry.
That's what I was keeping the 68.
Yeah, yeah.
Ah,
It is from later on we will read.
later on, later on. So
Yeah.
we are going to read from tomorrow. We are going to continue from page 68. Okay. Thank you very much to everybody who is attending. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindebhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I request all the devotees to please bring at least one or two devotees by sharing this link, and then they also can join the session. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.